Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth and final round of the HAPS Grant Interview process. I'm Dr. Joshua Bowen, and here at Digital Hammurabi, my wife Megan Lewis and I started perhaps the first ever crowd-funded research grant entitled HAPS, Humans Against Poor Scholarship. There is a great deal of poor scholarship here on YouTube, in social media, and really in our day-to-day interactions with others. Our goal in establishing this scholarship was twofold. First, we wanted to make it easier for PhD students to do new and exciting research, producing good scholarship. However, that new and exciting research often remains out of reach to normal, everyday people. This brings us to our second goal, to make this new scholarship not only available to everyone, but to do so in a way that is understandable. To this end, each of our applicants are asked to give a live interview where they will pitch, essentially, their proposed research project to you, the audience, who will then vote, starting today, by the way, on the projects that you want to see funded. We've been fundraising since August of 2018, when we hope to reach $2,000 to fund one PhD student's summer research project. However, viewers have been so generous that to date, we have raised, the new number, is $4,515.51. I hope that's updated. I think it is. Via Patreon and one-time PayPal donations. Now, we've already exceeded the $4,000 mark, and as long as our Patreon pledges do not decrease substantially, we will have received just over $6,000 by June. Having said that, we've lost $114 in monthly donations since the beginning of March, which means that while we can securely fund 2 students, the chances of funding a third are not looking as healthy as they were in February. If you would like to see us fund 3 students and can spare any amount, then please consider sending a donation to our PayPal account or joining our Patreon. Links to both are in the description below. However many students we are able to fund, however many students we are able to fund, it's all down to you, our viewers. Thank you. Anyone who contributes gets a say in how the money is used. After today's interviews, donors will have the opportunity to vote for the scholar whose research they find most appealing. Now, we've had a total of 17 applicants, which was an amazing response. 3 have since removed their applications, leaving us with 14 applicants to interview. All of the interview dates, which of course end today, can be found on our website, digitalhammurabi.com/calendar. Interviews will follow this format if you haven't been following along. 10 minutes for the applicants to introduce themselves and pitch their project, 10 minutes for discussion, and then 10 minutes for questions from the audience. So if you are watching live and you have questions, get them in now. Please put them in the chat and tag at Digital Hammurabi to make sure that we see them. In order to make sure all applicants are treated equally, we will be very strict about timings. So please get your questions in early to make sure that we get them. All right, our last round today, we're interviewing Miriam Bueno. I'm going to hopefully get all these names right. Helene Malloyne, Ryan Fitzgerald, and Priscilla Scoville. First up is Miriam, an art history student from the Universidad Nacional de Educación. Then Helene, a history student from the University of College London. Then Ryan, who is a religious studies student from the University of Texas at Austin. And then fourth is Priscilla, who is a history student from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. All right, that was my intro. And about 2/3 of the way through it, I did click the go live button, right? And I did. So that makes me feel better about being me. All right, so I've got Miriam here in the Hangout, so I'm going to click Show in Broadcast. And there she is. Miriam, if you unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can.
Perfect.
Welcome. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Good, good. Well, I always think that intro is going to take 10 minutes. And it never takes 10 minutes. So what we'll do is if you want to take The next 10 minutes, what we'll do is instead of ending at 12:30, we'll end at 12:25, just so that everybody stays consistent and you don't have to come up with 5 extra minutes of things to say, because I know this is not easy. By the way, I told somebody about this yesterday, and they said, "Oh my goodness, how do they come on for a half an hour and talk?" And I said, "Well, I'm just so welcoming and amazing." And they didn't buy that. So, but hopefully this will work out. So, Miriam, why don't you take 10 minutes and just kind of introduce yourself, let everybody kind of get a chance to learn about who you are, and then talk about your research and then what you want to do for your summer research project, and then how you'll use the money if you win.
Okay, so here I go. Hello, my name is Miriam. I'm from Spain and I'm an art historian. Currently, I am in my second year of the research for my PhD, focused on dance scenes from the Egyptian New Kingdom at the UNED, Universidad Nacional de Educación a Distancia in Spain. New Kingdom is a period of time between the 16th century BC and the 11th century BC, covering 3 dynasties from the 18th to the 20th. It is a period that starts with the reunification of the country thanks to Ahmose after the invasion of the Hyksos. With the Thutmose pharaohs, Egypt lives a moment of territorial expansion and prosperity, and the contact with foreign people increases. Then came the Amarna period with the reign of Akhenaten, who imposes a new art style and a complete new religious system with the prominence of the solar disk atom. The 19th and 20th dynasties are those called Ramessid, and with the last one starts the decline of the Egyptian empire until the power is divided between the pharaoh and the priest of Amun. With the important prosperity and stability that Egypt lives in this period, Egyptian painting and relief develop in both temples and tombs and reflects many aspects of the society, for example, the contact with other empires. And in these tombs and temples, we can find dance scenes that illustrate the funerary and religious beliefs of the Egyptians, as well as the fashion or some cultural and social characteristics. Through the study of dance scenes in private tombs, we can learn about how they helped to the rebirth of the deceased in the afterlife, with banquet scenes full of symbolism where we find dance scenes, or his entrance in the necropolis or in the underworld with the male dancers called Mu. But we can see too how dance and music was important in everyday life, represented overall in the private tombs from the Amarna period and in the temples, where we can see representation of different festivals. But as I said before, the study of this representation gives us information too about the contact with other empires, because we can see, for example, how the Egyptians adapted some instruments that came from other parts of the world, such as the angular harp, the square drum, the lute, and the flute, that appear in this period and came from Asia, some of them from Mesopotamia. I got into this research after writing my master thesis about the representation of dance in the paintings of the Theban tombs dated from the New Kingdom. Then I realized how important was this topic in the Egyptian decoration, and that there were many studies about it. And that's why I expanded the research for my PhD to temples and to other places, not only Thebes. Besides, it allows me to get 2 of my passions together, Egyptian art and dance. I have danced for many years, and it has helped me to understand that it is not only a physical activity, but it's a way of communication. While I was studying my degree, I saw a couple of dance scenes painted during the New Kingdom in Egypt, and decided to see how far I could go with that topic. After a few years, I know there is still a lot of work to do, starting with the compilation of all the representations. That is something that no one has done yet. So my research pretends to be a reference work for future studies on the topic. But this compilation is not easy because the scenes are dispersed in many publications, and even some of them are not published anywhere. And the copies are kept in museum archives, such as the one of the Metropolitan Museum of Art or the Penn Museum. So that's where this scholarship could help me, to allow me go to these museums and enter in the archives to see the scenes and include them in my project, because they are not available anywhere else. So the complete compilation of all the scenes will make my study much more accurate overall when I compare the scenes and study the dissemination of them, because I'm trying to see if there is a social or a geographical pattern in the representations of dance. Apart from that, I own a blog in Spanish focused on art and history, and that will help me to disseminate the results of my research and the publications or collaborations related to my project. So the topic will be much well known than it is now.
Well, very good. Excellent. Sorry. I usually, and no, that was great. That was really great.
Thank you.
I'm a little nervous here because as much as I've wanted to study art history, at least more than I have, I always feel a little nervous talking about art history because I just I feel like and of course it's in Egypt, which means it's even further afield. But maybe you could talk for just a couple of minutes. You say you're in your second year of your PhD. I think it would be nice to, can you, and you said that you dance and that's helped with the overall study. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on like what got you interested in Egyptology, and just in general, because I know that, a lot of people get interested in Egyptology for a number of different reasons. Some people it's because of ancient aliens, which of course I'm sure that are true, and you could speak about that at length. I'm obviously kidding for all of our fans watching. And also, the period that you're working in, Marion Feldman has written, I'm sure as you know, a book several years ago now, probably almost 5 or 6 years ago now, on that internet, maybe it was longer than that, on that international style, and looking at Ugarit and seeing the different motifs. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. But sorry, I'm rambling a bit. Could you maybe just talk about what brought you into Egyptology? Really in the first place. Why get a PhD in
it? I have loved Egyptian art since I was a child. I don't remember when was the first time I saw something related to Egyptian art. And I said, I want to do something related to it. And I read everything that I could about it. And then I studied art history without knowing I was going to end studying Egyptian art. But when in the last year of my degree, I had to choose a topic, and it was the paintings from the temple of Deir el-Bahari, Hatshepsut temple. And then I saw the dances and scenes inside that temple, and then I did my master thesis and now my PhD because of that.
Oh, that's fantastic. How long is your program on average?
It's 3 years I have to do. I'm in the second one.
Okay. And then do you have a certain number of years that you can write your dissertation, or?
I have written part of it already.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm not leaving all the writing for the last year. So I have studied overall the tombs, and I have the temples left for the last year. But
So by the end of next year, you'll have essentially written your dissertation. Is that
Yeah.
wow. So it's interesting, of course, over here, um, we have at Hopkins at least, we have 3 years of coursework, and then you take your comprehensive exams, and then students will normally take 4 to 6 years after that to write their dissertation. So it's quite a lengthy process, and so it's really neat to hear that you'd be able to get done and get out in the field. Um, Sorry, Megan just texted me. She's texted me questions because see, she's much more into art history than I am, and so she's texting questions that she wants to know. So I'm just gonna read a couple of hers. What kinds of people were buried in these tombs?
It's from the people that belong to the elite, to the bureaucracy in New Kingdom. No royal tombs. There are no dance in royal tombs. Just the important people that was near the king.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I remember the first time that I started studying the royal tombs at Ur, and yeah, it's always very difficult, I think, to get at what's actually going on in mortuary complexes and mortuary areas. So yeah, sounds like it's gonna be a lot of fun. So Megan asks, are dance scenes found widely on all kinds of tombs?
What does she mean by all kinds of tombs?
I don't know. That is a good question, and I'm sure that she will text me in the next 10 or 15 seconds and let me know. While we're waiting, I think we've got actually several questions coming in from the chat. So I'll ask a couple of those. So you might not be able to answer this, but does it seem as though these scenes show the same dance or ritual, or are they very different?
They are very different.
Okay. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, in the private tombs, for example, that is the part I have studied the most, there are female dancing scenes that just move sometimes a leg. You see the movement only in a leg. And then in the funerary dances, you see the men in a position moving one arm and one leg. So it's not really similar. The contexts are totally different. The person who dances is totally different because some are just female and some are just men. And for example, in the temples, there are acrobats. They are like doing a pirouette.
Wow.
So it's totally different, the representation of that. And in the banquet scenes I mentioned, you find that there are many instruments with the dancers, but in the funerary ones, you see there is no instrument at all.
Oh, wow.
It's just the dancer. So it has to be different in any way.
That is really cool. And Megan sent a clarification. She says all kinds of tombs, meaning men, women, all positions of the bureaucracy.
Yeah, all positions, yes. I am trying to see if there is a pattern in the profession they had or some of the titles they had, but I haven't found anything about it that could relate it to a special kind of maybe a religious title or no, I haven't found that. And in New Kingdom, they are overall male tombs because the female were buried with the husband or the nearest man of the family. So the titular, the owner of the tomb, is a male.
Okay. Oops. Let's see. You mentioned that the scenes play a part in the rebirth of the buried individual. Can you talk a little about what effect they may have, what effect they may have been thought to have? Did I say that right? Let me say it again. You mentioned that the scenes play a part in the rebirth of the buried individual. Can you talk a little about what effect they may have been thought to have? There we go.
Yeah, they are banquet scenes. So in a way, they are trying to entertain the people of the banquet, but they are not real banquet as the disease is on it. So it's the music and the dance was a way of making the communication between the dead and the alive easier. So they could communicate both worlds and then get it easier to move from one world to another.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so Intellectual Iconoclasm asks, please ask about dance and medicine, from fertility and birth death to depression or digestive issues.
With the banquet scenes, it has a link with the fertility because it's the rebirth of the diseases. So everything related to fertility, to rebirth, to go again to our world and communicate with the underworld, it's all related. But I don't know about medicine if it has a relation, a link or something. So.
Okay, yeah, it's medicine in the ancient world is it's a tough thing, and specialization, that's for sure. Intellectual Iconoclasm again. He asks, my lovely wife asks if she has information about dance and the acoustic healing resonance rooms.
No, I have studied that they don't know, we don't know exactly where the music was played when there was dance. Some scenes appear to be inside a temple, inside a palace, but inside a room, and some are performed outside. But there is no information about it, or I haven't found it yet.
What is, can you just talk about, do you know what the resonance room is, the healing resonance room? Because I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I understood. It's funny because part of our history cycle was, you took a year of Mesopotamian history, and then you took a year of Palestinian. I can't remember what they actually called it, but history of that part of the Levant, and then a year of Egyptian history. And I remember I had so little background in Egyptian history, and I was fascinated by it, but it didn't, because we don't run into it all the time. At least I don't, as a linguist. I don't run into it all the time. It's fun to come back to it, but I always feel like I don't have the depth that I need to have in order to really engage about it. Well, I need to read more about it. That's just the bottom line, I guess. Let's see. Intellectual Iconoclasm again. Has dance art been found in any of the tombs of sacred animals?
No, I haven't found anything.
Okay. What was it? Was it the there was a small animal that was buried in a jar. I think it was late, actually, in Egyptian history, like late first millennium. But it said I think there was a priest. Boy, I'm really getting this bad, but just pulling it from my memory here. One pot, but it might have been a monkey. Does that ring any bells? Like one pot, it was a rule, like one pot, one monkey. And because they were putting more than one monkey in the pot. Dr. Jazz now was talking about it, and I can't remember now. And now everybody's probably looking at their screen going, what's he talking about? Josh just asked the questions that the audience asks. Sorry. Okay. Vibrantly Brantley asks, has Miriam studied any tools made in creating artworks, like pounding stones for pigments, paintbrushes, or chisels?
I have read a little bit of them because it's useful to see, for example, in the female ensembles, when you see that there is a woman playing a lute and a woman playing a harp, and between them there is a girl just dancing, sometimes that girl has a darker color. And sometimes it is because of the pigments. I mean, it's not something that the artist did, but maybe the pigments applied to the painting has changed over the time. So you have to study some things like that to see if the changes are original or they have happened after they painted the scene.
Okay. Interesting. Mark Robbins, he asks, are there any warlike dances seen in your research?
Any what?
Warlike, like battle, I guess battle scenes.
I have found just in Theban tombs, I have found just like one that is probably a military dance because they have a drum, which is an instrument that doesn't appear in any other kind of scenes. So just one, and I don't know if I will find more.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. Megan asks, what other kinds of scenes are there on tomb decorations? And are there a lot of differences between private and royal scenes?
Royal scenes, I mean, dance scenes in royal tombs, there aren't any. I have found dance inside royal tombs. Apart from that, there are in private tombs, in Thebes, there are dances inside banquet scenes, which are really similar between them. Sometimes there are copies of the same scene in different tombs. In funerary context, I have found the Mu dancers, which are like 2-3 types of dancers, but they are really similar and the meaning is so similar. And then I have found other scenes that you cannot make big groups of them because just 1-2 scenes are similar. And I have found like a monkey dancing, acrobats like in temples, and a lot of female musicians dancing, and the military one I told before. And in Amarna, all are related to festivals. They are completely different from the Theban one. They are related to festivals. And in El Cap, I have found the same kind of scenes as in Thebes.
Cool. It's interesting when you get into research and you start actually bringing all the data together. I know I did this. I had this huge Excel spreadsheet, and I wrote on lamentational liturgies in Sumerian, and from the early second millennium. And I remember after putting 4,000 entries in all these different texts, starting to sort them into these categories and to see the patterns. And that's a really, it's a very elucidating and exciting moment because you start to see, if we look at this diachronically, we can see that, these changes take place. If we look in the north, we can see these things are happening, whereas in the south, these things. So it's, for those of you out there that, wonder if doing research can be exciting. Yes, it can. And those are the moments when you start to see those patterns. So very good.
I started with 50 scenes, Now I have like 100.
Wow.
And it's like, let's make groups, because if I don't make the groups, I will get crazy among these pictures. So yeah,
it's really interesting because, you know, Megan is writing on royal inscriptions from the third and second millennia. And it's interesting because it's not only about creating categories, but it's also about looking at how other people in the past have categorized these things. So she's collected all these royal inscriptions, and people like William Hallow have gone through and categorized them in certain ways. And what she's doing is reevaluating that classification system and saying, you know, is this the best way that we should look at this? And I suspect that, you know, if no one has done this before, as you said, you know, what's neat about it is you'll sort of get the ball rolling with your dissertation, with your project, with your book. And then, you know, maybe, you know, 10 years from now, somebody will come along and they'll say, boy, they're going to stand on your shoulders, and they're going to, you know, take your classification system and maybe develop it a little bit. So, you know, for those of you watching, the research at this level is actually, it can be really exciting because, you know, sometimes you come up with a completely new idea, something that nobody's thought of. And then sometimes you're reevaluating other people's ideas and coming up with an even more precise way to think about, you know, the things that they've thought of. So it's a lot of fun. It could be a lot of fun. All right, we got a couple more questions, and then I think we got time maybe for one more. Let's see. So Boobska II asks, I am well aware that this is a silly question. The modern dance Walk Like an Egyptian uses a sort of ridiculous Egyptian pose. And I think I might remember it. It's this one, and then that one, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that
one. I've never seen that pose in Egyptian art. Do you know if it's based on anything? That's a really good question. That's not silly. That's a really good question.
Yeah. I haven't found anything like that in New Kingdom. I don't know about other periods, but not in the New Kingdom.
But you know what? On the cover of your book, when you publish your dissertation, that's what you should do. You should be on it, and you should be. You're like I'm kidding. It's probably not a good idea. Well, at least don't do that when you defend. You know, walk in the room like this. That's funny. Oh my gosh. Well, Miriam, this has been great. We started about 5 minutes early, so I'll let you get out of here 5 minutes early. But why don't you take the last 2 minutes and just sort of maybe bring it all together, sum it all up, and say, here's why my project is really important, and here's why you should vote for me, because they're going to start voting today. So really feel like Ryan Seacrest here. That's what I feel like. All right, Miriam, go ahead and give a real good pitch. Sorry, I don't know if everybody watches American Idol, but sorry, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So now I have explained my project already, and the most important part of it is the possibility of getting all the images, the scenes I can, to make it the most complete possible, to make it the most accurate possible, and get a real conclusion of it all. Because if I only have a part of the scenes, then the conclusions won't be complete, and then things can change having like 20, 30 pictures more than I have now. So that's why I need the scholarship.
Excellent. It's really important. I mean, there's no doubt about it for everybody watching. If you have a data set and you draw a conclusion without having all of the data set available, it can be very, very difficult, to make good conclusions. So, well, excellent. Well, Marion, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for dealing with my inadequacies here in knowing about Egyptian art. So this has been great. But we will hopefully be talking to you again soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. So next we have, that was fun. That was fun. Next we have Helene. And Helene, I'm gonna broadcast you. If I can figure out where that is. Show and broadcast. Beautiful. And Helene, if you want to unmute. You there?
Hi. Sorry.
Oh, do I need to unmute you? Because I can see you, but I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
Can you guys hear in the audience? I can't hear. Let me try present. No, that wouldn't do it. I'm going to mute you and then unmute you, and maybe that'll. Oh, wait a minute.
We can hear, honey, but I think you've locked the screen.
Oh, I've locked the screen.
So we can just see you.
Is it working?
Well, I don't know what that means. Okay. So, Helene, I tell you what, Helene, can you maybe go out and come back in?
Okay.
And let's just see if that fixes it, because I got to be able to hear you. All right. Sorry. This is all my fault, I'm sure, somehow. But Megan has said that that you guys can hear, so that's great. Okay, so I will now try to broadcast again.
How's that?
Nothing. Oh. All right, Megan, you may have to come help me. Because I've exhausted all possibilities now of what to do. And I hear Megan's footsteps coming toward me. Sorry, everyone. I'm quite certain that this is my fault. Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Hi, Helene. Hello, everybody. There we go. Why can't you hear? Because I can hear. Sorry, everyone. There has to be something with our speakers.
But I haven't done anything since the Miriam.
No, I know. Because I can hear, Helene, I can hear you absolutely fine in the living room. But we can't hear out here. Oh, no, this is...
Well, maybe what we'll do is...
Is that working now?
Maybe you... Helene, maybe you just talk.
Hang on.
Oh.
Okay.
You're inviting yourself.
I am.
Oh, I see. So, right. So maybe what we're going to have to do here, and I'm really sorry, is Megan will come in, and maybe she'll be able to hear you, and then we'll do a third-party interview. Well, I tell you what, why don't you go ahead and just take 10 minutes, and because they can hear you out there, and just go ahead and tell everybody about yourself and your project, and then we'll get rolling somehow. Hopefully, we'll have it figured out by then.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I guess everyone can hear me. That's great. Thank you, Josh, and Digital Hammurabi, and everyone for having me, letting me talk about my project. And so my name is Helen, and I'm an archaeologist, a historian, and a curator, and I'm interested in the history of archaeology as a discipline, and sort of how we as archaeologists communicate with the public. And successfully doing so, I believe, and that is what my PhD thesis is about, makes us better archaeologists. So I studied at University College London in the history department. I'm in my 4th year, and that means I'm in a writing up period. It means I've written about 2/3 of my PhD by now. So my work looks at the time between the wars, that is to say between 1918 and 1939, when, for example, Leonard Woolley was excavating in Ur, Howard Carter found the tomb of Tutankhamun, and John Marshall was excavating the Indus Valley. And so this is often called the golden age of archaeology because of these big and very important discoveries. But perhaps viewers in America are maybe more familiar with people like James Henry Breasted, who founded the Oriental Institute in Chicago, or Edward Kiera, who was a philologist and archaeologist, and they were also active during that period. So now we'll connect some of these names and why they'll remember today a reader. This period was a formative time for archaeology, especially in Britain, and that is the area I focus on, because university institutes were being founded and archaeologists became professionals, so to speak, so that is, you could now take up archaeology as a career and study it without having to rely on private income. And very importantly, also more and more women were becoming archaeologists. So this is the intersection that interests me in my work, the popular and the professional side of archaeology. So how have these two sides of a career influenced each other, and consequently the course of archaeology as a discipline? And what I do in my thesis is I look at this by looking at books written by archaeologists specifically aimed at a general reader, newspaper and magazine articles authored by archaeologists, and how they communicated with listeners on the radio, specifically on the BBC. So in fact, so what I'm interested in are the forefathers. My screen has gone blank, so I have no idea whether I'm still live or not, but I'm going to keep talking. I'm looking at a pre-digital Hammurabi, is what I wanted to say. And so my background, I studied archaeology of the ancient Near East back home in Switzerland. And then I moved to London to study museum studies, because actually I wanted to share what I love and find fascinating about ancient communities with other people. So at the same time, I started working on an excavation in Turkey at a place called Terachana. And this is the location of the ancient city of Alalakh, which was occupied during the Bronze and early Iron Ages. So that is to say between 2000 and 1000 BC. And so the archaeologists among you, please don't get into a fight with me about chronology. This is just a very general date I'm giving. So the site is in southern Turkey, close to the Syrian border. So if you know where ancient Antioch is, we're about 15 miles from there, or about 60 miles, or about 100 kilometers from Aleppo in Syria. And Alalakh was a very important city in the Middle and Late Bronze Ages. It's located on the river Orontes, which runs from modern-day Lebanon through Syria and into Turkey, and then into the Mediterranean Sea. And so this proximity to the rivers, the sea, and major trade routes connecting the city to Anatolia, northern Mesopotamia, and Syria made Alalakh into a major trading hub. We have many objects found from places like Cyprus, Anatolia, and even Egypt. So people came to meet and exchange knowledge and goods at Alalakh. We're not the first team to dig there at Terachana. The site was first excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 30s and 40s, but our current project has been running for over 15 years now. So now I joined this great team in 2012, and we have people coming from all over the world, from the States, the UK, Italy, Germany, and many other countries. And we work with the Turkish academic and local communities. So my position on the team is I'm the registrar. That means I'm in charge of registering all the objects we find. This includes things such as beads and tools, large architectural pieces like column bases and flints, anything that comes out of graves, figurines, cylinder seals, vessels, anything you like really. And our object materials, our materials range from metal, ivory, bone, clay, glass, faience, stone, and occasionally, but only very occasionally, wood or even textile. And my job is to record these objects on our database. So I describe them, measure them, make a sketch, and then assign them a location in our storage depot. And some of the complete and more important pieces go to the local museum at the end of the season. And it is also part of my job to arrange this with the representative of the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism. So in fact, I talked to a whole host of specialists. We have archaeobotanists who look at plant remains, bioarchaeologists who are interested in human remains, zooarchaeologists, of course, look at animal bones, pottery specialists, conservators, researchers who come to look at, for example, beads or metal tools, or other types of objects, and who visit us during the excavation season to see our finds. Of course, we also have lots of students, undergraduates from various universities in Turkey and from around the world who come and learn about fieldwork methods with us. So you can actually now imagine Terachana as a place where people meet and exchange knowledge. And it's just like they did in the Bronze Age. So one reason why initiatives like this HAPS scholarship is so important is because archaeology is severely underfunded, as you surely know. So every archaeologist I've ever met considers their work very rewarding in itself. And all of us work far more hours than we're paid for by our fellowships or by university jobs. But most of us, and that includes me, we don't get paid for working at Terachana. Not because our universities or the governments don't consider our work important, but because there simply is no money to go around. And in addition, in my case, because work I do, as I've explained, does not directly link to my PhD research. My university doesn't support me with funding. So if I were to receive your funding, it would make a very big difference in my life to be able to pay for airfare, travel insurance, visa fees, and other expenses involved in traveling to Turkey. And as a student as well, this would make a great difference in my life. Now, we're also currently preparing one of our publications on the late Bronze Age levels. And of course, I'm very excited and honored to be part of that. But that might mean further expenses, because I might have to become a researcher in turn and visit other sites, maybe visit a library to do some research. So also your contributions would help with that. And I would very much appreciate your vote. Now, I don't know what is happening because there's no image. I don't even know whether I'm still live or not. I've kind of run out of things to say for now, but I can just talk about my PhD work perhaps, because that is what I do all the time.
Okay, so I still can't hear anything. And sorry,
Her research sounds fascinating.
Okay, Megan says your research sounds fascinating. Megan, why don't you try to come in the room? Yeah, I am really sorry. This is very frustrating. And sorry to both Ryan and Priscilla. They were both here in the room with us. And sorry, this sounds really bad. I don't know a better way to say this. I had to eject them to see if there was a glitch. Because Ryan, when you came in, you came in twice and you were in there twice sitting there. So if you guys want to, you can come back in. And actually, yeah, I don't. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Megan has texted me some questions from the audience because, of course, I can't see those questions either. So I'm going to ask you, and then I'll mute again. And actually, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll put them in the side chat. Can you see the side chat?
Yeah.
So I'll put them in the side chat. You can answer them, and because I won't know when you're done. Sorry. I'll ask you the first one here. So Vibrantly Brantley asks, was Indiana Jones an inspiration for you growing up? And if so, how common are snakes on excavations?
Well, I think every archaeologist who says that they don't like Indiana Jones, they're lying, because all three, and I'm ignoring the fourth one, movies are really, really good. So I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to be an archaeologist, to be honest. That is always was always my goal in life, shall we say. It's a really hard thing to achieve, I think, because, as I said, there is no money around. Not everybody's as lucky as Indiana Jones to just find little things just lying around in a temple or fighting the Nazis. Why there are no snakes? There are no snakes on our... Well, there are occasionally snakes on our excavation, but not whole vats full of snakes. I have never seen that. I guess it's because they don't really like people that much, and they're, I think, probably more scared of us than we are of them. Again, if it's just one or two of us, one or two of them, actually, should I say? I see there's some more questions from Sarah. The most significant finds. Oh, that's a really tough one. We have everything is significant. It kind of depends on your perspective. That is, well, I personally really like the small finds that we get. I like beads, anything that is made out of faience or glass or anything like that. Picture is gone again. No Josh, so I'm just going to keep talking. Other people really like pottery, so I think pottery is really important because it helps us create a sequence of dates. And I think that is probably, despite it sounding perhaps really boring, one of the most significant things that we find, I think. I have another question. What do you think about physical excavation techniques versus developing electronic scan? I'm not quite sure what you mean by electronic scanning. Do you mean ground penetrating equipment? If so, I think always, physical excavation techniques are always going to be very important, simply because we also collect actually a lot of samples. So we collect a lot of soil samples. We collect a lot of samples that are going through flotation. That means we're going to float them to find plant remains that we can then analyze to look at what people ate, the environment, and things like that. And I'm not sure that you can really catch these kind of things with electronic scanning. Do you have any more questions for me? Or I can talk about my research or more about snakes and chopping their heads off. That is what we do. Or I can talk about my research or more about snakes.
Sorry.
Chopping their heads off. That is what we do.
Sorry, I've got you. This is so convoluted, and I'm so sorry. I still can't hear you here, but I brought you up live, which of course there's like a 12-second delay. All right, it's 12:41. How do you feel? Because okay, so here's my concern. My concern is that actually, I'm going to bring the next person in. Actually, let's do that. Ryan or Priscilla, if you're watching, would one of you come back in or both of you come back in? Because here's the thing: if you come back in, by the way, Megan is feverishly trying to restart her computer out there so that she can come into the Hangout and take over the interview. But if one of you guys can come back in, then I'll check and see if if it's my computer or if it can't be your computer. I have no idea what's going on, frankly. Maybe we should just restart the Hangout. I don't really know. And there's a 10-second delay, so Megan won't hear what I'm saying for 10 seconds. So, and I don't know what to ask you because I didn't hear anything that you said.
Well, how about I just talk about my PhD?
Oh wait, I can look at the live chat.
No one can get in. Can you close it down?
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I tell you what, we'll go ahead because this has been such a cluster for you. We will go ahead and end it for you here, and what I'll do is we'll talk offline. And after these streams, and then if you'd like to come back on, and we'll do another like 10 or 15 minutes. But I feel like just the fact that you've been a champ through this, and sort of taken it on yourself to interview yourself, I think that says a lot. So thank you for your patience in this.
Well, thank you for having me.
So here's what we're going to do. Ryan and Priscilla, if you can hear me, I'm going to shut this down. Everybody watching, give me about 5 minutes to redo this. And actually, it'll probably be Megan redoing it. And then she'll open up a new Hangout, and then we'll send out the link. I'm really sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast here, and then we'll start it again in 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
That's great.
Thank you so much for your patience and all this.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Hi, everybody. We're back for HAPS Interviews Round 4, Part 2. Thank you all for your patience. You may have noticed that I have morphed from Dr. Joshua Bowen into Megan Lewis. I'm giving Josh a break because after that last 15-minute stint, I think he needs a good, strong cup of coffee. And thank you very much to Helene, who kept going like a champ. If you've not seen the last 10 minutes of the HAPS Round 4 Part 1, I highly recommend you see it. It involves Helene talking to herself very well, because we just...
I did that quite a lot, so...
You did fantastically, and you had questions about snakes and Indiana Jones, and I mean, what's not to love about that? So, for those who are just joining us, welcome. glad to have you. We're going to finish up Helene's interviews, and then we're going to go on to Ryan Fitzgerald and Priscilla Scoville, who have both very kindly agreed to push everything back by 10 minutes so that we can give Helene the due time. So if you were just in the part 1 of this hangout, please, if you have questions for Helene about her research, about her summer project, please put them in the side chat and tag me, and we will get those to her so she can answer your questions. So let's get going. Helene, you're going to be working at Telechana this summer as the objects registrar. Can I ask how you so you're working on a dissertation on the golden age of archaeology, which sounds fascinating, by the way, absolutely fascinating. And one of the problems you're having is that because your excavation work is not related to your dissertation work, it's actually quite difficult to get funding to carry out that summer research. How do you balance two such demanding research areas? Because I have a hard enough time just doing my dissertation. If I was doing my dissertation and working as an objects registrar at an active site, I have no idea how I do that. So I'd love to hear, practically speaking, how that works out for you.
Well, yeah, it's really just a question of compartmentalizing when I do what, and because I probably don't do as much reading about the archaeology side of the work as I probably should do. So I just spent about a month or two before grad in the summer to catch up on any publications that have come out, things like that. But mostly the rest of the year, I actually spent working on my PhD.
Excellent. So how did you get into excavation? Was it something that you just did as early in your student career, or?
I studied in Switzerland. It was a really small university. We actually only had one excavation project, which was in Syria at the time. It was a long time ago. Then, as I said, I moved to London in 2010 to come here to study, and then they were advertising for archaeologists, and I just joined the team. Awesome. As an intern, and then I just kind of stayed on the project and sort of slipped into this role of objects registrar, which is not really something you study or learn at university, really. I've never seen any courses for anything like that. But it's just something that you kind of, also apparently nobody else wants to do it, and I don't understand why, because I think it's actually the best job on the team, because I get to see everything. I get to see all the objects and all the samples and everything. And
I was going to say, I bet you just have your hands on everything that comes through that site. You must have a really good overview understanding of the site as a whole.
Well, I hope so. I mean, that has taken me a really long time. I've been on the team now for 7 years. Obviously not quite as big a grasp as our directors, which have been doing it for 15 years and longer. But yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I did a season's field work, just site survey at Alalak. Have you had issues with the things like the Syrian civil war? Because I was there a couple of years after things started, and we were fine, but you could hear firefighting when you were out in the field, and it was quite unnerving at times.
Yeah, we could hear it when I was there in 2012. We are very close to the border. It's really only 15 kilometers to the border, really, but it's a heavily militarized zone. We could hear some bombing when that was happening at that time in that area. But apart from that, like I said, it's such a heavily militarized zone. We don't really come into contact with any of the refugees or anything like that. It hasn't. I mean, it's a problem in the sense of that we need special travel insurance because the British Foreign Office advises against travel to that particular region. So you need special travel insurance, visa fees, and all these kind of things. But like I said, we've been working there for 15 years, and not only are most of our team Turkish, most of them are actually also from the region. So we have a really good connection with the local community, with the local university where one of our directors teaches. Most of our students come from there, so we're really integrated into community as well. So, and with the police and the military there as well, we have really good communications with them. It's never really been a problem being there or or feeling unsafe in Turkey or in that area generally.
That's fantastic. So the other thing that came across quite strongly in what you were saying initially is what you feel is the importance of like community outreach and kind of disseminating academic scholarship to a non-academic community, which obviously is what we do. So is that something that you managed to do, have had an opportunity to do anything with in Turkey, or is that still a little bit tricky?
No, so we have several things going on at the site. So first of all, we've turned it into an archaeological park, which means the site is open to the public throughout the year and while we excavate as well. So anyone who wants to can come and visit and get like a mini specialized guide tour if they wanted to. It's a little bit off the tourist track, so we don't get a lot of tourists, but we get some members of the local community. We have somebody on our team who works with schools. So she goes to schools and teaches them about the past and archaeology, and works with museums. There's a really, really good local museum which was opened in 2015, I think. Brand new, like everything, brand new labels and panels and everything. So they do a lot of work with outreach and schools specifically. Like I said, we work with the local university, with the Mustafa Kemal University. They send our students. We have some of our staff teach there, and they sort of also, I think it's also outreach as well, actually. Mm-hmm. Previously, so 2014, my colleague and I, Murat Akar and I, we had an exhibition at Istanbul. So where the original excavation was conducted by Leonard Woolley in the 30s and 40s, and he took a lot of photographs of the site. So what we did, we digitized those glass slides, and Murat, who is also our project director, one of our project directors, he's also the site archaeology and photography are connected throughout history and still are, and how the local community has always been very important in archaeology. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not sure that, like people, when we work in the Middle East, and traditionally people working in the Middle East in the early 20th century have usually employed huge amounts of people. So people like Leonard Woolley would have 500 people working for them. But there is very little in the literature about them. They hardly ever mention the fact. It's always the archaeologist finds things or excavates a city.
Yeah, occasionally you'll find like a team leader.
Do it. So it was important for us to show that not only it's not just people coming from the West and finding things, it's actually you need the local community. They know where everything is, and that they are the ones doing the hard work and the hard labor. And we, of course, also have very great people on our team from the local community who work for us. And most of them are actually on the team for much longer than most of the students, so just passing through, there's so many ways that you can tell people about archaeology, really.
That's fantastic. I was actually, for my own research yesterday, reading the original publication of the Bismaya excavations, which is ancient Arab, and just the way in which the local workers, the people, like you said, who are actually doing all of the labor, who actually go down and find this stuff, the way they're kind of glossed over and almost written out of the whole process is very interesting, and I think very indicative of the time in which these publications were written. But Banks tells a story about how they found a statue and they kind of uncovered just the body of the statue, and rather than excavate it in full that day, he pretended it was nothing, covered it over, because he didn't want the locals to see it. I'm not 100% sure why, but it was an interesting choice. He covered it back over, and then after everyone went home for the day, he and two of the senior team leaders went back and properly excavated it, because I think he said he didn't trust that the locals would actually do a good enough job of excavating it. He wanted to do it himself. I cringed internally a little bit there.
That is a common theme in early 20th century archaeology, sort of not trusting the locals and the natives, as they're often called, unfortunately.
Natives, no.
So a lot of people had very special sort of techniques in going around that, especially in the Middle East, where there's a lot of mixed communities, and in Syria as well. So there's people from Sunni communities, Druzes, Alawi, different religious communities. So what they would do is actually they would create a gang who would excavate one trench, one from each community. So they thought they would watch each other and sort of make sure that the other one if you have an Armenian and a Sunni, and they will watch each other, make sure the other one doesn't steal anything. So it's a bit like it's a divide and conquer approach to archaeology, which again points to like the military connections that archaeology has always had, and most people did work in during the war as well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, one of the things that I found very interesting when I started looking into the early history of excavation in the Middle East is how many of the people who started, well, maybe not started that, but were like given official sanction to do that kind of work were active military or ex-military or like diplomats or consuls out on some kind of official governmental business. And now it's almost entirely the purview of educational institutions. It's an interesting shift.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, of course, these were the people who had access to those colonial environments, shall we say, because they're already there. If you think about Paul-Émile Botta, who was the French consul who was excavating at Nineveh for the French government, or Henry Rawlinson, who was working for the East India Company. So they were already on site, so to speak. And of course, if you are an explorer, you have I think probably, you know how to organize an exploration, you know what to buy, you know how many boxes of tinned spam you need and things like that, where to hire a dragoman and things like that. So I think there are two things that come together. So it's an organizational question, but it's also a question of connections. So you're all in the same club.
Yeah, you went to school with like the local governor.
You always eat and to Oxford, and you know all right people. So even if you're not part of that officer class, you will know someone who is. And if you need permission to go somewhere and do these things, I think they're easily organized in that time. And of course, it's a boys as well.
Yes. Okay, so we do have a couple of questions. Nick J says, "What is your favorite part of the work that you do?"
I'm not very good at drawing things, so that's probably the least favorite part of the work that I do. I think my favorite part is, it's going to sound really weird, I like measuring things a lot. I really like getting a handle the objects, most importantly. And also because now we have a really large storage depot, so we're constantly having to reorganize and make more space. So what I get to do is I get to go through our backlog and see everything that has been excavated when I wasn't there before I got there. So I get, again, a really good overview of like what was happening before, and I get to review other people's descriptions and things like that. So I think, yeah, actually I'm not part of the field team, so I don't do actual digging now, but I get to dig through the depot, so I get to dig through everything that has already been found. And I think that's probably my favorite thing to do.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. I think I'd enjoy that as well. And there's a certain joy as well in organizing things.
Yes, I think that's also something that we probably share with philologists as well. It's making lists. And making ordering things.
Yeah, and color coding everything and making sure it's all in its right place. And
yep.
Oh, Vibrantly Brantley said, "Are there any estimates of how many ancient items there are that have been lost to history because they've been sold off to collectors in the 1800s?"
Wow,
that's a good question.
That's a really good question. I don't think I can come up with a number on the top of my head.
Let's go with lots.
Hundreds of thousands, especially if you think about tablets. So, for example, in the 19th century, so some of these tablets are, of course, now in the British Museum or at Yale or at other large collections in Europe. But these have always been things that have been just around the black market, or it wasn't even necessarily a black market, just the antiquities market was available very easily. So I mentioned James Henry Breasted, for example. He went on basically a shopping tour right after the war. Right in 1919, he traveled Egypt and to collect things, to get things, and to get the prism that Luckenbill then translated. Right, that was one of the things that came out of that, and they just bought it at a shop. Or you think about these things that just like really easily dispersed. Another thing that I want to mention that perhaps some of you will find really interesting, there's a project called Artifacts of Excavation. And it looks at all the objects that have been dispersed from Petrie's excavations in Egypt. So because a lot of people contribute to excavations in the early 20th century, you could donate some money and then you would get an object in return. All of these museums, that is why there's so much stuff, the hundreds of thousands of Ushabtis that are around in the world. And so these people have, so people who created that project have collected all of that information from all of the I think it's over 200 museums in the world that have items from excavations. And it is literally all over the world. And so if you can have a look at how many objects they have there, you can just, I think, extrapolate that. And
that's amazing. And it's not even, I should make the point, it's not even, as Helene was saying, it's not even that things have been lost because they've been sold to collectors. A lot of the time they're sold to museums, and then they're published and academics know about them. But when you're then trying to go back and reconstruct the history of how these objects were used, it's incredibly difficult, because in a lot of cases you don't know what site things came from. All you know is that it was bought at a bazaar somewhere in Iraq during the 1920s. And then you have to, if it's inscribed and you're lucky enough to have that inscription, you can say, oh, well, this inscription talks about a particular city, so maybe this object came from that city, but it's not really a sure thing. It's educated guesswork at the best, I think. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were also, you could also donate, for example, Leonard Woolley was excavating an ore in Iraq, right? You could donate to that as well as a private person, and he would send you a handful of beads or a little pot or something with a little letter saying, thank you for your 2 shillings. Here's a handful of the 3rd millennium. It's like,
have fun. So there must be thousands of things in the UK just lying in people's attics.
Wow.
Just like that, you could just do that.
No, you'd definitely get in trouble for doing that today. Well, we are, I think we probably hit our time. But thank you again, Helene, for your patience and for your fortitude. Do you want to take just 2 minutes to wrap up and provide an overview for people who have just joined us as to who you are, what you're doing, and why it's important?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so if you get my votes, as Josh said, this is like American Idol. Vote for me, because my work is actually connected to how we communicate with the public as archaeologists. So it's really important that scholarships like these, that are the ones that you're providing, help people to reach out and understand archaeology better. So my work is working at Tel Achana at the site of Alalach as a registrar, and I need your help to travel out there, to pay for visa fees, insurance and things like that. And it helps me become a better archaeologist, and in turn making the ancient past more interesting for everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good luck, and we will be in touch soon. Okay.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now we have Ryan. Ryan, I'm going to unmute you. If you could unmute yourself as well. There we go. I think we have you.
Hello.
Hello. Wonderful. It worked. Nice to meet you. So everyone, this is Ryan. Ryan, would you, thank you first of all for letting us bump you back. I think we ended up with about 15 minutes. I really appreciate it. Would you just take, maybe we'll give you the first 10 minutes to say hi to everyone, who you are, where you come from, and then go over your research proposal on what you plan on doing this summer.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Ryan Fitzgerald. I am a PhD student at the University of Texas in Austin, and I am in the Religious Studies department studying 2nd century Christianity as my subfield. Now, I knew ever since, from the time that I was a child until college, that I wanted to be a lawyer. And and then I went to college, small private liberal arts college, and I took some religion courses, introductory courses on the Old Testament, New Testament. And I started finding out things like Moses didn't write the Pentateuch, or maybe the book of Revelation is less a roadmap for the end of the world and more so a socio-political commentary on the Roman Empire. And these kinds of topics just upended so much of everything that I knew. And my story is not unique. This is very typical of people, especially in the South. This is in North Carolina. For people to go through. And so that's what brought me into the field. And because everybody around me was a Christian, I was raised as a Christian, and this is my social location. That's what led me, say, to the New Testament more strongly than the Old Testament and the development of early Christianity. So what I study now, years after this, is actually the 2nd century construction of Christian identity, and particularly the way that they develop tension essentially with their contemporary Jews. And the question is sort of, how did Christians form their socio-political identity? And part of the answer is they invented a Christian identity at the expense of Jews. And so this is what scholars call the parting of the ways, this conversation about when did Christianity and Judaism become two distinct things, because it's common knowledge that Jesus was a Jew and his earliest followers were Jewish, and that eventually they stopped calling themselves Jews, they started calling themselves Christians. And so when exactly this happened is actually over a course of centuries. And so I'm looking at the 2nd century, particularly with authors such as Justin Martyr, famous for his death, but more interesting for his writings, and particularly how they created Judaism against Christianity. So when Christians were forming their identity, they needed to create something that they were not. So in order to say we are this, they have to say we are not that. And the that I'm talking about, if I'm not too obscure, is Judaism. And so they created their own form of Judaism. They created their own version of Judaism against which they could define themselves. And so one of the main strands in Justin, for example, is that they created a Judaism that was dependent upon what we would call a biological descent. So they're sons of Abraham, therefore they are, they're descendants of Abraham, therefore they're the right people of God, they're the proper people of God, just by nature of their birth, what Christians will then call fleshly descent, fleshly lineage. And Justin says, through a really crazy, obscure, even he calls it obscure, interpretation of the Hebrew text, well, the Greek translation of Hebrew texts, ask me about it. It's funny. He claims that Christians, these Gentiles, these non-Jews, who are now sort of the majority of people calling themselves Christians, are actually the spiritual descendants of Abraham, therefore the right, the proper descendants of Abraham. And so because that was their main problem. What was the Gentile problem? The Gentile problem, the Gentile Christian problem, was how do we claim essentially the entire literary history of this other group of people that call themselves Jews? And so, to put this even more clearly, Justin and other Christians like him created a version of Judaism that was based on what we would call biological descent, regardless of whether or not Jews ever actually thought of themselves that way. And more recent scholarship has demonstrated they didn't actually really think that way. But that doesn't matter for these Christians, because what matters is how they are representing themselves over against an other. And this is what we snobs in academia call othering, creating an other so that you can say that you're not that. Now, there's a lot of, nitty-gritty stuff, that's going on in my project. This is my dissertation. But I'd like to make a point about why this, I guess, is important. Why it is important is because essentially the process that the Christians are doing, this process of creating a version of their opponent so that they could attack that version. You know, this is a straw man argument. That's the logical fallacy. This happens still today. And the reason why this is important is not so that I can necessarily teach people about the Bible. Yes, I want to do that. But it's not just about that. It's not about explaining people Justin's obscure interpretations of the Septuagint. I want to do that too. But it's about recognizing the social strategies that are going on in the 2nd century, because they still go on. And I don't think it would take anybody listening very long to think of a few examples of how this happens today with today's political climate, and particularly in America, to the process of describing a villainous group of people and then attacking that projection happens all the time. And so what we learn from history is, well, we learn everything from history, but what I'm particularly focused on is explaining this process of Christian self-definition, the social, the body politic that they're creating, not so that I can just explain about Christianity. I would love it if that was all I was doing. But one of the things that being at a public university has really turned my mind towards is outfacing scholarship, as this entire project is based on. And scholars have a responsibility to get, not just to talk amongst ourselves, but to project outward. And to some extent, I'm always thinking of my 18-year-old self going to university, and I knew everything. 18-year-olds know everything. That's, of course they do. And I knew everything about my faith, about the Bible, and I knew all there was to know for the most part. I was taking classes because I needed the credit.
It was easy credit. It's stuff you already know, so why not?
Yeah, exactly, easy credit. And so I think about that version of myself all the time, because now I know nothing. And that is who I'm striving, that is my target audience, essentially. And so when I've taught undergrads here, I can't help but think this is who I was. And the important fact is not that I want to make everybody go into this field. Side note, don't. It's really long and hard and expensive, and it's not really practical. You really have to like what you're doing to do this. So don't do it. Be an engineer. But but it's because my hope is that through teaching, and through teaching particularly, this development of Christian social identity will be reflected in their minds to understand what's going on in history now. Because now we are making history. We are always making history. And particularly in America, we're going through seems like we're going through a lot, but we're going through a lot now, and 50 years from now, people are still going to be talking about this. And to understand the ways that social groups form themselves over against others is a crucial factor on understanding how history progresses and how things go, how things are. So that's my pitch.
That's awesome. Thank you. Can you just take maybe 2 minutes and say, why do you need the money?
Why do I need the money? Well, I'm not going anywhere. Basically, I hope to be on the job market, and you need money. You need to spend money to make money. What's going to happen this summer is I'm going to be going to conferences. I am going to be hopefully going to job interviews. If I get this money, I'm basically just going to be turning it over to like Southwest Airlines or something.
Career development.
Because I'm essentially going to be looking for a job, and hopefully I finish my dissertation and then look for a job. And that's so. If I win, if you vote for me, you will not be supporting a particular project. You'll be supporting me and my endeavors.
Excellent. A very legitimate use of the money for an academic, because he wasn't lying when he said this is expensive and time consuming. It really is. Like, going to conferences, you can find grants for that. You can find like little pockets of money here and there, but you have to pay airfare, you have to pay conference registration fees, you have to pay for hotels and then food while you're there. It's very expensive. And then interviews are also expensive. So definitely.
And I love that you can pay for you pay for the conferences, and you get a discounted rate if you pay to be a member of the society that holds the conference.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and professional registration for this kind of stuff is like a couple of $100. So yeah, it's expensive, people. Okay, so we are going to get into some questions. Thank you for that, by the way. That was absolutely fascinating. I know virtually nothing about the formation of Christianity, so I learned something today. And we do have a question that you kind of touched on. Intellectual Iconoclasm says, this story sounds very familiar. Those stresses between Jews and Christians back then, are they still present? Are they part of the friction that we see today?
Yeah, and part of so the short answer is absolutely yes. And as recently, the most extreme example is the Holocaust, is that there were fears stoked by Europeans about Jews that were not real. Again, they created a version of Judaism that was influenced by 1800 years of history, of Christian history writing against Jews, that fed directly into that. But more precisely and perhaps more insidious, maybe, even if though not actually practically devastating, is that the entire worldview that we have on, say, world religions. What is a religion? What is Judaism, Christianity? What is Islam? All of this really comes from a European, Christian history that defined all other religions on the model of itself. So you have a history of the creation of all of these religions that some of them bought into it. Some of them, Judaism eventually, because Christianity was the dominant hegemonic power, Judaism did eventually say, okay, we're a religion like you, because they didn't have a choice, because the narrative was being written by Christianity. And so the point, tensions between Christians and Jews, some people, there's still the idea that, well, the Jews killed the Messiah. Well, so the Jews are bad. And there's the famous, when the Passion of the Christ came out, there was a little bit of controversy. Well, there was a lot of controversy, but one particular controversy was that there was the line from Matthew where Jesus is up and they're saying, crucify him, crucify him. And they say, let his blood be on us and our children. And this is the blood libel. And this is, Amy Jo Levine from Vanderbilt has called this the most devastating biblical text for Jews in history, because the Christians could point to this text and say, oh,
yeah,
Jews admit that Jesus's blood is on their hands. And this has been the cause for, indirectly or indirectly, for pogroms through history. And so basically, this long-winded answer is yes, this tension is still there. But more important than, I would say, just the tension between Christianity and Judaism is that the Western view of what is a religion is entirely based on a Christian narrative and a history of Christian hegemony that has defined the terms of the conversation. So a lot of what I do in my own work is try to not undermine, but understand the process of that control, understand how that narrative, that dominant narrative, came about. And so that is the bigger takeaway, I would say, rather than just Christians and Jews have tension. I'm not undermining your question at all. It's a great question. That's why I'm talking so much about it. But the much bigger issue that taps into is the 1800-year history of a Christian hegemonic narrative of the way that the world is.
Great, thank you. That's a very full answer. We have another question from the same person, asking about how much of the early Christians' attempts to distinguish themselves from the Jewish population was influenced by the Roman Empire.
I would say a lot. Now, this, you look at people like Warren Carter or something, and he'll say, well, everything was the empire. There's a great book by Michael Peppard that says that the model of Jesus, particularly in Mark, was to be sort of a anti-emperor, like an anti-king. And some of this gets like really explicit, as I mentioned in the book of Revelation, the last book in the order of the New Testament that we have, which is actually, I call it a Jewish text, really. It doesn't really know what a Christian is. But it's completely, against the Roman Empire. But then you have people like Paul, who in Romans says, well, the people in power are in power because God made them in power. And so so the New Testament doesn't have a consistent view on this, and the New Testament wasn't around, or it was, not set for hundreds of years. So the Christians in the 2nd century, they had a lot of different views about what the empire was. Was it good? Was it bad? Justin Martyr, this Justin that I'm talking about, in his apologies, he is actually pitching that Greek philosophy is right, essentially. They just didn't have the whole picture, that they were close to Christianity. And he actually claims, people like Heraclitus and Rufus are actually, tapping into the Logos, the what he calls it, the word, the right ideas. And this is, he's writing in the time of Marcus Aurelius, the great, Stoic emperor. So all of the philosophy of the time and the empire were not distinguishable as such. There was a whole ideology. Now, there's another question that I won't get into unless I get asked another question about it, about the nature of the emperor and the imperial cult. And that is explicitly condemned, say in Revelation. And part of my argument that I didn't touch in this was that the imperial cult is actually participating in these creations of lineage, using the work of Nancy J in particular, and then Stanley Stowers reading Nancy J. That the imperial cult, I think that the imperial cult represents a different kind of lineage against which the Christians were also defining themselves.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating, thank you. So we have maybe about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to zoom through a couple more questions, and then I'll give you a couple of minutes to just wrap up and summarize for people who have only just joined us. So Nick J says, why are you looking particularly at Justin Martyr? Why not, for example, and I'm going to butcher this name, Saint Athanasius?
Well, in part because I like Justin. There's always a degree of arbitrariness, I would say, with these.
You have to draw lines somewhere.
You mean Athanasius?
Yes, probably. Yes.
Okay.
I just can't read.
Okay. Partly is that we have very few 2nd century things. And, I just, I like what I like. The short answer is I like what I like. But the bigger answer is there are plenty of people that I could look at. And I'm not trying, my project isn't an attempt to do everything and to look at all the apologists. Why not the preaching of Peter? Why not, Quadratus? Why not Aristides or Aristides? These are all apologists that I would say are actually doing some of the same things. Even in the Nag Hammadi texts, they still, in the Sethian literature, they're all doing these lineages and whatnot, which is why it was so popular that in the pastoral epistles, First, Second Peter, First, Second Timothy, and Titus, I forget which one of the Timothys, it says stop talking about genealogies. It actually says like stop this. And yet, this is how Christians were defining themselves. So I'm looking at, and again, when I say Christians, I don't mean all Christians, because there is no such thing. There's no statement that I could really make that would be true for all Christians. So what I'm looking at is a particular strand, and that strand is evidenced in the writings of Justin, essentially.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Bubska II says, you're focusing on othering against the Jews. Do you have any idea of how this compares to othering against other groups like the Gnostics and Zoroastrians? Sorry, can't read today.
It's fine. Yeah, so the Zoroastrians, not so much. They didn't seem to, I don't think they seem to care that much about them. But the Gnostics, this is, of course, another big question. One of the books that I have my computer sitting on right now actually is Karen King's wonderful book, What is Gnosticism? And so what were they? Meh, we don't really know. But one of the problems with other forms of Christianity, other sects, like the Nag Hammadi literature, what became to be called Gnostics, is that they were pretty much post facto destroyed, essentially. So there's one of the things about history is that all history is revisionist history. And it's, the famous statement, history is written by the winners. So if you look at Irenaeus, he is the big bad of the Gnostic world, say. You read Irenaeus, and he's a contemporary of Justin, and Irenaeus is reading Justin and likes Justin. And I've heard it said that if Irenaeus hadn't liked Justin, we wouldn't not have Justin. We wouldn't know who Justin was if it weren't for the fact that Irenaeus, a much more popular writer, liked him. And Irenaeus goes on this whole rant, and he creates a version of Gnosticism. He says, these are the Gnostics. And part of this, and this it went on until more recently, that we believed Irenaeus was telling the truth, because he was defining a group of people that he called Gnostics and saying they believed all this crazy stuff. So then when we discovered the Nag Hammadi texts in the early 20th century, or first half of 20th century, we were like, oh, this is what Irenaeus was talking about. So these are Gnostics. Now, this has been dismantled in more recent scholarship, particularly the work of my professor, Jeff Smith, has written a book that dismantles a lot of the way that Irenaeus has been read. But essentially, this version of Gnosticism didn't really exist, which is why you have Karen King writing What is Gnosticism, which is why you have David Brackey writing a book that deconstructs Gnosticism. It's why you have famous Michael Williams in the late 90s wrote one of the more influential books of the past few decades, where he basically said Gnosticism is not a thing. It never existed as such. So so in some, Zoroastrianism, not so much. They don't really write about it. In some of the later literature, you get some crossover with stories about the Magi, actually. Another one of my professors is a world expert on the revelation of the Magi, Brent Landau. And there's some crossover with Zoroastrianism there. But with Gnosticism, the exact same process of creating a version to against which to define was happening in Irenaeus much more strongly, say, than Justin. But and it has affected how we have viewed Gnostics for 2,000 years.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much. So everyone, we have about 3 minutes left, so I'm sorry we're not going to get to the rest of the questions. Thank you all for being so engaged and interested. Ryan, I should tell you, we've had about 3 people say, when are you starting your own YouTube channel? So if you want to just take a couple of minutes, sum up what you've said, just for those who weren't here for the beginning of your interview, and then we will move on to Priscilla.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Ryan Fitzgerald. Please vote for me. Your vote and the money will go to continuing my scholarship and maybe starting a YouTube channel. What I do is I study the 2nd century creation of Christianity, how they invented their social identity, particularly against other versions that they create of different peoples. So they created a version of Judaism, and eventually, I didn't mention this, but eventually they create what is called paganism, which is basically everybody else. There's no such thing as paganism, but they invent it anyway because there has to be, everybody has to be in one of these 3 categories. So this is what I study. I think it's important to communicate this, not because I want people to know necessarily about ancient Christianity, not because I want people to understand the Bible better, although I think that would better society, generally speaking, but because it's important, and this is the big takeaway again, it is important that people understand the process by which social groups identify themselves, and particularly how they frame their own social identity against others, because that against others, that leads to both real harm, real practical harm, and feeds into a lot of modern debates and a lot of modern discussions. And, you know, I'm in America right now, but the same conversations are happening in New Zealand, in Australia, in Britain, and Germany, in Turkey, like pretty much everywhere, the exact same, or the same kind of process, they're qualitatively the same kind of process is going on. And my aim is to help as many people as I can understand that process, because I think that through understanding the process, we can only but improve.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your patience earlier. This was absolutely fascinating, and we will be in touch in about a week or so.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ryan. Bye. Oh, let me remove Ryan. Okay. And now we have Priscilla. Okay. There we go. I can see you. Can I hear you?
Yes.
No. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I did.
Oh, my goodness me. It's happened again.
I
can't believe this. Nope. We might have to have a round 3, everybody. Oh, no. Okay. Can you, Priscilla, just try coming out and coming in again, and we'll see if that does anything. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. We are just, nothing has changed since Ryan left. And we had Priscilla on before we started the 2nd session of today's interviews, and I could hear her beautifully. And now we can't hear her anymore. You can hear her? Oh, my goodness me. Okay. Well, that is a pain. And given that she's not back, I suspect that means that the link is now broken. How very exciting. If anyone here works for Google and feels like either telling me what I'm doing wrong or fixing our live stream, I would very much appreciate that. Okay, Priscilla is back. I can see you. Can you say something? Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, beautiful. It worked. Oh, goodness. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. We're going to keep going with this for as long as it works. Fantastic. Okay, Priscilla, thank you for joining us. Again, thank you for your patience. Why don't you take 10 minutes and introduce yourself, what you research, why you research it, and then what you're planning on doing this summer.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize for my English because I'm not an English native speaker and I'm not very used to speaking English very often. So I probably make some mistakes and just ask a little patience with that. And well, I am a historian and I am doing my PhD in Brazil at Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. It is far south of Brazil. And I am saying that because here in Brazil, the ancient Near Eastern field is just starting to grow now. The first researches was made by a professor in the 60s or 70s. So there is not many people studying it right now here. And everyone that wants to study it has to be a historian. So that's why I am a historian, and I be in my MA in history also. And as it's really new field, we don't have a great center of studies or great groups of studies. So if you think that's fair enough and you vote for me, I want to travel around Brazil. I have some points in mind because it's a huge country and we only have 3 professors that are archaeologists and are allowed to teach us. So I want to go around Brazil and give short courses or talks or anything at all that can help undergrads to start studying it and help the field grow here. I think that's really important right now. And about me, I am studying the international relationships between some kings during the Amarna period. So my main source is a group of letters, which are the Amarna letters, found in Egypt, about the time of Akhenaten or Amenhotep III. And these letters were found there, so the major part of them are received by the pharaohs, these letters. But there is some of them that are sent by these pharaohs, and for any reason that we don't know, has a copy there. But it's only a few. It's a total of almost 400 letters, and 3 or 4 are written by the pharaohs. And I want to understand them as a whole diplomatic system. So I want to approach them as a network analysis. I want to make a graph and visualize this system as how they interact, who has more contacts than the other, and everything around this. And this is part 1 of my research. I want to understand them as a system and have this analysis made as through network analysis, and then compare it to images and things that are in Egypt about the other kings, but it is not sent to them. So as it is many letters, I am studying just the great kings. Each is only 5 of the great kingdoms of the Near East at this period. It's Hatti, Egypt, Mitanni, Babylonia, and Assyria. Assyria has a question mark because at this moment it's growing, but it's not yet fully grown, and it's just starting now. But for now, I'm counting on it. And the lesser kings are vassals or kingdoms that are dependent of Egypt. So the letters from them are most administrative. So they are asking for something or reporting something. And so those letters I'm not worried about right now. I'm just worried about those from the great kingdoms, which are 14 letters. So
I have to ask, do you have a favorite letter?
Yes, I do. I really love the letter 26, EF26, which is from Shurata, from Mitanni, to T, the Queen of Egypt, wife of Amenhotep III. It's an amazing letter, and he's saying how important she is to Egypt and how important she is to to the relations and the establishment of these relationships. And I think it's an amazing letter. I only wanted that there's more for her because that's the only letter sent to a queen. So I think that's a really important letter right now. And I studied it. And the other letters from Lithuania during my MA, it was really nice. But in my MA, I studied like rhetorical questions to these letters. So I just worried about what they are saying, what they want to say, to understand this reciprocity that exists between them and how it works only in Lithuania in this case. Now I'm growing my field and I want to start doing that with more kingdoms. My supervisor says that I am a little bit crazy for doing that, but I hope it's okay.
I think advisors contractually have to tell PhD students that they're crazy at some point.
Yeah,
it's necessary.
She always say that, but she allows me to continue doing that, so I will keep going. And I think that's amazing. It's an amazing thing that I can do because I have all the support from him, and other professors here in Brazil are helping me a lot, especially with the network analysis because it involves a lot of math, and I'm terrible at math. So other people are helping me a lot with that. And what else? I think that's it that I have to say. I hope that's clear enough because it's already a mess in my head.
That was very clear.
I think that's fair enough. Because these kingdoms, they are said to be equals. They treat themselves like brothers. They can't say they are better than the other, but I think they do not respect that. They just write that.
They all secretly think that they're better than whoever it is they're writing to. I'm pretty sure.
So I want to understand that and compare this information with whatever soldiers or scribes have written in their tombs or temples that says about these other relations and are not officially letters that the other kings can see.
Fantastic. So you're kind of, with the network analysis, you want to compare the official line of what the kings are saying to each other versus what the actual feeling in the country may have been towards these different nations.
Yes, exactly that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. And audience, if you have questions for Priscilla, please put them in the side chat and we will get them to her. So this, your summer project, going around and teaching, sounds absolutely fantastic and a massive undertaking. Are you looking more at like elementary schools and middle schools, or would it be a college-based teaching program?
I think right now it just go to undergrads, but like an open event, so everyone that is in high school can also attend, but focus on undergrads, so they can start studying it from there.
That's fantastic. So they kind of get at least someone telling them, hey, this exists. This is a possibility for your own research.
Yes, because the researches about Eastern here in Brazil are most focused here in the first half where I am, or in São Paulo, or in Rio de Janeiro, which is a very small space. Mm-hmm. So in Brazil is huge. It's a huge capital. So whatever you go to any other place, they have no contact with that. When I started studying years, I'm not from here, I'm from other state, it's Paraná, also in south, but not far south. And when I started studying, I had no support at all. So everything that I wanted to know, I had to do by email with professors from other places, including from other countries, because we have nothing here, nothing is written in Portuguese. So it's quite challenging for us right now. So that's why I want to give the others the chance that I didn't have.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very admirable. Are you the way you're planning on teaching? Are you going to focus on like an introduction to the history, or select particular objects or time periods or archaeological sites even to kind of give people a flavor of what you're looking at?
Well, it depends on how much time the place gives me to stay there. So how many days the university allows me to teach. If I get to go a short course, more than a talk, I will want to go around an introduction to the team, an introduction to cuneiform, and if I get it, someone is interested in something special, so I will talk about that also. But in general, more introductions to some points.
Fantastic. I think that's awesome. So we have a couple of questions from the chat, so I'm going to get to those now. Cretan Captain Idomeneus. Is it useful to do a network analysis with a corpus like this? Since the letters we found were left over from when the court moved away from Akhetaten, they took the letters they needed with them. So the inference there is that we don't have a complete corpus from Amarna. This is just the leftover stuff. So the most relevant letters concerning the Great Thick Kings were probably not there when the site was excavated. So can network analysis really be useful in an incomplete corpus like that?
Yeah, I think network analysis is really good because it helps us show and understand the system as a whole. Although we have only the letters of Egypt, it can show us some things like how many people are connected to them. It has to start from Egypt always. So my main point of view will be from Egypt. But I think we can find something that is interesting about it. For example, has a really recent research by Klein and Klein, I think that's their name, about network analysis in this Amarna corpse. And it's amazing how interactive we can notice they are. Like it's a whole Near Eastern world. So it's many places and many people involved, and it's a small world system. So which means that with 6 jumps or 6 contacts they made, they can reach anyone else around there. So we can understand with network analysis the relation of them specifically, because it's from Egypt always, but we can understand how this system works. And I think that's just a start to understand how they can be interacted by other members.
Thank you. And I think that's a question that actually is a good question. And it's something that comes up with whenever you're working with any kind of historical information, because no corpus is complete. Especially when you're getting that far back into history, there's always something missing, something's been destroyed or moved, or people just don't keep everything. There isn't enough space.
That's totally fair, because when I was doing my MA, my idea for a PhD was to focus on Mitanni. And there is nothing about Mitanni. We have nothing. And everyone said that to me. And I was just so disappointed that I couldn't study that, because I really love how Mitanni works on the scarps, and I really wanted to study it. So that's when I came with the idea of studying the whole group, not just one place. But also at this moment, I wanted to get the Bogaskoi letters, the Luzi tablets, and understand them. But my supervisor said it was too much. I had
after you graduate.
Maybe later, lifetime job. But then.
Thank you. So Zupater says, was Zananza murdered? If so, who do you suspect?
Has. There was murder involved on those letters, but it's more like nomad groups that are there, and we don't have exactly how to say who murdered who and why or where. There is an amazing letter from Burnaburiash, the king of Babylonia, and he says that his messengers were killed or and attacked in the way to Egypt, and he was demanding the king to do something to find this man, to rescue the money that he lost and everything. And it's quite a book can be written by that, because it's really nice to see how a tiny letter has just a few words, and it says so much about how things work, not just between the kings, but how people managed to go there, how the messages traveled, and what to expect in this way. It's
One of
amazing.
the things, yeah, one of the things I really like about letters is it's not always what people are saying. It's the kind of the like the feel you get for the world that they live in. Because without that kind of thing, you wouldn't know maybe that a messenger traveling from Babylon to Egypt could be killed. It's these little bits of information that come up in documents that I think, at least for me, make them so fascinating. So we have a question from Vibrantly Brantley. Did you lose any research materials in the National Museum in Rio de Janeiro during the fire that took place earlier this year?
Happily, I didn't, because there is nothing about that here in Brazil. Most of my letters are in British Museum or Metropolitan or in the Louvre or in Cairo, so there was nothing here in Brazil. But the Egyptian collection was very damaged by the fire. They are finding something, fragments right now, is still working on it, so it's not completely lost, but the Egyptian part was really, really bad damage.
It was my Twitter feed and Facebook feed were just full of historians and archaeologists and non-academics, just people mourning the fact that so much had been lost.
And the sad part is that it was announced that you would have fire there, because they had no money. They were saying that they needed to maintain the museum, that they couldn't. The museum was closed, fully closed, more than one time before that, because they couldn't pay to stay open. And then when it happened, it was no surprise. And there's a very huge number of museums here that are in the same situation, and the government doesn't invest on them, and we are just waiting for the next fire.
They haven't been given, following this, they haven't been given more funding at all?
No. There are some governments that are helping. I think the German government are helping, and the French government, but Brazilian government doesn't invest much in this new president that we have. It's terrible. He doesn't want us to learn anything at all. He thinks that he doesn't need to invest in education. So it's quite a difficult moment right now. For example, I wanted to do my PhD abroad. I had everything fixed. I was seeing places to live. I was going to Liverpool. But at the last moment, government just canceled all the sponsorships, so I couldn't go. So we are facing this problem right now for the last years, and it's quite difficult for us, especially in humanities. Right
So
now.
that makes the kind of outreach project that you're planning this summer even more important than it may be in other countries.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. With this money, I'm not just helping myself, but I trying to resist something that is totally ignored by the government. I'm trying to help the others to keep trying to stay in the area.
Wow. I'm going to just move on before we both burst into tears. Captain Cretan Captain Idomeneus, I promise I know how to speak. Idomeneus, saying, is anyone, as far as you know, searching for the capital of Mitanni, which would help your MA dream?
Well, I don't know that. I think there is not a group specifically for Mitanni, because when I was looking for somewhere to do my PhD and I had this idea of Mitanni, I contacted every place on earth And everyone that I have read in a book or in a journal, and anything that's said about Mitanni, I tried contact with, and everyone said that it was impossible because right now they didn't have anything and they didn't have any idea of how finding anything. So I think there is nothing right now of people looking for Mitanni, especially because we don't know exactly where it was. So it's fine. It's hard to go and find something. Have just an idea, general idea of northern Syria, but doesn't have any idea exactly where they are.
It's very tricky. There are a couple of sites in like southern Mesopotamia, like Assur. We have not Assur, Agade. We don't know where it is. We know roughly, maybe, but we don't know exactly where the site is. And because of the political situation in Syria and the surrounding regions, it's difficult enough to go to existing archaeological digs. Opening new ones is, as I understand it, actually quite tricky and requires a lot in the way of diplomacy and government intervention and that kind of thing. So hopefully one day they'll find it, and then we'll all know more about the Mitanni, because it's something I'd like to know more about as well.
I would really be happy if they found something, because it was such an amazing kingdom, and it didn't last many years, only 2,000 years, and that's it.
And you're right, it's one of the big influential powers of that time. And when you're learning the history of the region, you learn about Assyria and Babylonia and Egypt and the Mitanni. And then you want to know more about them. And Assyria and Babylonia and Egypt, there's plenty of research that has been done, so you can go and do some reading. But really, if you want to know anything concrete about the Mitanni, it's incredibly difficult because we just don't know.
Yes, it's really hard. And I was always a curious child. So when I first heard of Mitanni, I was crazy. I need to know what the hell is Mitanni, where it is, who they are. And no one had nothing to me. I asked many people, no one ever heard of them. So I started doing that by myself, and it's quite disappointing because I couldn't find anything. And I tried so hard.
And you're all the way at the end in this PhD position, and there's still nothing.
Yeah, it's so hard.
And actually, this is we've got maybe 5 or 6 minutes left. So if you have questions for Priscilla, please get them in. But I'm going to ask, how did you get interested in the ancient Near East, especially if it's something that is not terribly widespread in Brazil?
It was really, I don't know how, because when I was in my undergrad, I was studying in Egypt, because I was working at the Egyptian Museum of Curitiba, which was where I was born. And I stayed there for 2 years. When I left the museum, I continued studying Egypt, but I have a friend that was worried about the Goths and the end of the Roman Empire. And he started saying about the other places around there, and I started imagining things, and I simply just said that I don't know anything about it. So I started studying it, and it was captivating me. So, and another friend of mine said to me about those letters, and then I read the Mitannian letters. The first ones that I read was about Mitanni, and you just love at first sight. I don't know. I can't explain it.
No, I had a similar reaction when I first read some of the Amana letters. They're fantastic. I love reading old letters. And the fact that we have letters from so long ago is amazing. They're fascinating.
Yeah, I love them. The first letter that I read was this one from T. That's my favorite until now. It's just amazing how much can we see in a tiny letter. It's fantastic. I love it.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we don't have any more questions. So Priscilla, I'm going to ask you just to take a few minutes, give us an overview of who you are, what you're doing for people who are just joining us. And then I think we'll wrap things up.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here till now, and for my English skills that are not so great. But, well, I studied these diplomatic relations between Egypt and Hatsi, Assyria, Mitanni, and Babylonia during the Hammurabi period, which is with the kings of Amenhotep III and Akhenaten in Egypt. And I want to understand it as a system, as a whole, between these 5 kingdoms, and then compare it to the images that are inside Egypt in temples or tombs or literature or anything at all that says about these kingdoms. And I think that if you think that's fair enough and vote for me, please. It's a huge thing you're doing, not just for me, for whole Brazil. I want to go there and teach other people and try to help this field grow right now, because we don't have many people interested in it in this moment. Actually, I am the first PhD student studying in Brazil here. So we're the first group of people that are concluding this research here. And I think I can help other people to follow my path and stay here and help this field grow.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and we'll be in touch in probably just over a week. I'm going to say goodbye, and then I'll get on to telling everyone about the voting system so that we can actually get this thing rolling.
Goodbye, then. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for joining us, Priscilla. Okay, everybody, thank you all for your patience. I know this has been a little bit touch and go. We've seen a couple of people in the chat say it wouldn't be a digital Hammurabi live stream without some kind of technical glitch, and unfortunately they are quite right. We try, but we're academics. We're not really computer people. We try. So thank you everyone for joining us. This was our final HAPS interview out of 4. We've seen, I think, about 14 applicants. We've heard all of their presentations about all of their research and all of the projects that they are hoping we will help them fund over this summer. So thank you for joining us. I've loved it. It's been absolutely fascinating. And I think you'll agree that we have a really exciting selection of research projects to choose from. I was originally going to send out the voting information right after the live stream ends. Unfortunately, I'm not quite ready yet, but definitely by the end of today, that is March 23rd, I will email all of our one-time donors. So if you send us money via PayPal, you will get an email from me. And if you are a Patreon, there will be a post up on our Patreon page telling you how to vote. If you're a donor, a one-time donor, and you don't receive an email from me regarding the voting process, please do email us, digitalhammurabi@gmail.com. Something's gone wrong, I've missed you off the list. Let me know, I'll get back to you. Voting is going to be open until Saturday, May 30th, 2019. That is 1 week from today. If you contribute to the HAPS Fund after that date, don't worry, you can't vote for this summer's research, but you can vote for HAPS 2020 next year. I will put you on the list for next year. So I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to Josh for starting off the live stream.
And thank you to Megan for saving the day.
Hello,
I snuck in out of nowhere.
You did sneak in out of nowhere. Oh, so thank you everyone. This was absolutely wonderful. Again, if you're a one-time donor, look out for an email from me. If you are a Patreon, please check the Patreon page later today for information on how to vote for the student that you would like to see funded.